There is a part of you that you have never fully met. It lives behind your smile, beneath your certainty, underneath the life you've carefully built. It's the part of you deny, repress, fear, and judge in others. It is your rage, your envy, your lust, your shame, your genius, your wildness, your truth. Carl Jung called it the shadow. He didn't mean evil. He didn't mean some dark demonic force lurking outside of you. No, he meant something far more intimate. The shadow is you in your fullness, all the parts your ego refuses to see. And Jung believed that until you face it, you cannot become whole. But this wasn't just theory. Jung lived it. In fact, it was his confrontation with the shadow that nearly broke him, and ultimately made him. After his split with Freud, Jung descended into what he called a confrontation with the unconscious. In visions, he met figures who embodied power, madness, seduction, and destruction. He wrote of a dark god that rose up inside him, a force so terrifying, he thought he might be going insane. But instead of fleeing, Jung listened. He wrote it all down. He painted it. He dialogued with it. He entered the shadow, and what he discovered there changed everything. In this video, we'll explore the original raw concept of the shadow, not the watered-down self-help version, but the one Jung wrestled with in solitude, in dreams, and in the pages of the Red Book. You'll learn why the shadow isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. Why repressing it leads to projection, addiction, depression, even violence. And how integrating it can unlock creativity, truth, power, and peace. Because the shadow doesn't go away when you ignore it. It waits. It festers. And eventually it shows itself, whether you're ready or not. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is the truth of the shadow. And this is the invitation to meet the part of yourself you fear the most. Carl Jung's discovery of the shadow didn't come through abstract study. It came through descent. After his split from Freud in 1913, Jung entered a period of profound psychological crisis. He feared he was going mad. His nights were filled with visions, dreams, and waking fantasies. Figures appeared to him, violent, seductive, terrifying. Rather than escape or medicate, Jung chose something radically different. He listened. In the Red Book, he documents this inner journey in vivid, symbolic form. He speaks with mythic characters, confronts serpents and gods, descends into dark caverns, and is torn apart by visions of chaos. It's here that the seeds of the shadow begin to take shape. Jung realizes that the psyche is not neatly ordered. It is vast, multilayered, and full of conflicting energies, some of which the conscious mind refuses to see. The shadow, he came to understand, is the unconscious aspect of the personality that the ego does not recognize in itself. It is everything we deny, disown, repress, and project. These are not always bad things. The shadow contains what the ego cannot tolerate: rage, cruelty, envy, yes, but also power, sexuality, instinct, creativity, and intuition. Jung wrote, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. This recognition is not comfortable. Most people avoid it. And when we do, the shadow doesn't disappear, it projects. What we cannot face in ourselves, we see and hate in others. Have you ever felt a disproportionate rage at someone's behavior? An unshakable irritation toward a type of person, a political group, a social identity? That is often your shadow acting out. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The more unconscious your shadow remains, the more it controls your behavior." Addictions, repeated relationship patterns, sudden rage, emotional shutdown. All can be signs of repressed shadow material. But the shadow isn't just personal. In 4 archetypes, Jung explains that entire societies have collective shadows, rejected values, historical violence, traumas that are split off and buried. These shadows emerge in times of crisis, in war and propaganda, in the creation of enemies. Jung warned that if the collective shadow is not acknowledged, it will rise in the form of authoritarianism, cultural collapse, or mass projection. And still, he never saw the shadow as evil. What makes it dangerous is not its nature, but our refusal to face it. So what does facing the shadow look like? Jung's answer wasn't moral perfection or repression, it was integration. To integrate the shadow means to acknowledge it, dialogue with it, and begin the lifelong process of reintegrating the disowned parts of yourself. This is not an intellectual task. It is visceral, emotional, spiritual. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung shares how he faced his own darkness. He writes about being overtaken by powerful images of murder and destruction. He felt the presence of something ancient, what he called the dark god. At first he resisted, but over time, he came to see this force as a necessary part of the self, not evil, but incomplete without conscious awareness. Through painting, writing, and deep introspection, Jung slowly reclaimed his shadow. And with it came insight, vision, and a clarity of purpose he never had before. For the modern person, shadow work might begin in therapy, in dream analysis, or simply in honest reflection. What emotions do I fear? What do I harshly judge in others? What parts of me were shamed as a child? Where do I sabotage or shrink from my own power? The answers are not always pleasant, but they are always liberating, because the shadow is not just a source of fear, it's a reservoir of energy. When repressed, it controls you from the dark. When integrated, it becomes strength, clarity, confidence, and creativity. Jung believed that true spiritual growth is impossible without shadow work. That enlightenment doesn't come from ascending into light, but from holding the tension between light and dark. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This was not a rejection of goodness, but a deeper, grittier kind of truth, that to become whole, you must make peace with your own wholeness, and that includes the parts you've tried to exile. In the Red Book, Jung ends many of his visions not with triumph, but with humility. He learns to bow to the dark figures, not as villains but as guides. He begins to understand that they are part of him, that the monsters we run from are often carrying pieces of our soul, and so the shadow is not your enemy, it is your mirror, your wound, and your invitation to become fully, wildly, truthfully, you. Carl Jung believed that the person you pretend to be and the person you truly are must one day meet. The shadow is not something you fix. It's not a flaw. It's a truth, a living part of you that has been hidden, exiled, or demonized. Not because it's evil, but because somewhere along the way, you were told it wasn't acceptable. And so it sank into your unconscious, into your body, into the dark. But the shadow doesn't stay silent. It leaks. It returns in your projections, your triggers, your sudden rage or shame. It shows up in dreams, in your judgment of others, in the places you sabotage yourself or shrink away from power. And yet, Jung never saw this part of us as something to be feared. He saw it as a doorway, a path, a task. He knew that you cannot become whole while rejecting parts of your own being. And so he made a radical choice, a choice we are still learning how to make. He turned toward it. He spoke with it, painted it, wrote it down, and in doing so, he found something sacred. The shadow is not just where your wounds live, it's where your medicine lives too. Your power, your intuition, your wild, creative, unapologetic self. It doesn't mean giving the shadow control. It means acknowledging it, seeing it, integrating it, so that what once controlled you from the dark becomes part of the light you carry with intention. So ask yourself, what part of me have I exiled? What am I afraid to admit? And what might happen if I brought it into the light? Jung showed us that true healing doesn't come from denying your darkness. It comes from learning to hold it with love. Because until you face your shadow, You are not yet your full self. And the moment you do, that's the moment your real life begins.